The woman's hand felt cold even through my glove. Not winter cold, death cold. But the orchestra had already begun the waltz, and pulling away now would cause a scene at the Galactic Summit's opening gala. I'd asked her to dance 30 seconds ago, drawn by her elegant burgundy gown and the loneliness in her crimson eyes. Now those eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my survival instincts scream. "You're human," she said. Not a question. Her accent carried notes I couldn't place, syllables that seemed to echo twice. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Earth Diplomatic Corps. I guided her through the first turn, hyper-aware of the other dancers giving us a wide berth. "And you are?" Complicated. Her lips curved into something between a smile and a warning. "Tell me, Lieutenant, do humans still believe in monsters? Around us, alien dignitaries from 40 species mingled under crystal chandeliers. I'd spent 3 months memorizing protocols, learning which species required eye contact and which found it offensive. Nobody had mentioned what to do when your dance partner asked about monsters while her fingers dug into your shoulder hard enough to bruise through dress uniform. "Only the ones I've met in person," I said. She laughed, a sound like breaking glass. Honest. How refreshing. Most would have lied. Her gaze flicked toward the grand entrance where 2 figures in midnight armor stood motionless. "My guards are watching. They believe you've made a terrible mistake. Have I? Ask me again in 5 minutes." She moved with fluid grace, but her steps followed a pattern I didn't recognize. Not the Terran waltz the orchestra played. Something older. "You chose me from everyone here. Why?" "Because everyone else avoided the corner where you stood, and I've always been an idiot about lost causes. You seemed interesting. I am the most dangerous being in this room." She leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper. "In 3 minutes, someone will realize who you're dancing with. They will panic. When they do, don't run. Running triggers instincts I'd rather not explain." My heart hammered against my ribs. The smart play was to excuse myself politely, but her grip had shifted from my shoulder to my arm. Not aggressive. Almost protective. "Who are you? You may call me Seraphine. And you, Marcus Webb, have just become very important to several powerful people who don't want you to be." The music swelled into the second movement. Seraphine guided me through a spin that brought us face to face with the Crithian ambassador, whose 6 eyes went wide before he stumbled backward into a serving drone. "That's one," Seraphine murmured. "The panic begins." Whispers rippled through the ballroom. Dancers stopped mid-step. A glass shattered somewhere behind us. The 2 armored guards by the entrance moved forward with mechanical precision. "The Sanguine Queen," someone hissed in Galactic Common. "Blood Mother." "She's here." My training kicked in even as terror flooded my veins. Sanguine. The vampire species from the Crimson Nebula systems. Not myth. Not legend. Real. And I'd asked their queen to dance because she'd looked lonely. "Don't tense," Seraphine said. "Your ambassador is approaching. Let me handle this." Ambassador Richardson materialized at the edge of the dance floor, face pale, diplomatic smile rigid. "Lieutenant Webb, Her Majesty Queen Seraphine." What an unexpected pairing. "Your lieutenant has exquisite manners," Seraphine said, "never breaking our dance rhythm. So rare in these political gatherings, someone who chooses companionship over calculation. I'm certain he didn't realize that I could drain him dry before your security forces crossed half this room." Seraphine's crimson eyes glinted. "You're correct. He didn't. How delightful," Jack said. Richardson's smile cracked. "The treaty protocols clearly state the vampire royalty maintains 10-meter distance from protected species." "Yes." "I wrote those protocols, Ambassador." Seraphine executed a turn that put her back to Richardson, forcing him to either walk away or breach etiquette himself. "Your lieutenant initiated contact. The treaty makes exceptions for consensual interaction." "Marcus," Richardson said, voice tight, "you can step away. No one will fault you." But Seraphine's cold fingers trembled against mine, almost imperceptible. The Sanguine Queen, terrifying enough to clear a ballroom, was shaking. "I'd like to finish the dance," I heard myself say, "if Her Majesty doesn't mind." Seraphine's eyes snapped to mine, surprise flickering across her perfect features. "You understand what I am?" "Yes, ma'am." "And you're not afraid?" "But you asked me not to run, and I suspect you have a reason." The predatory edge softened into something achingly vulnerable. 300 years, she whispered. 300 years since someone chose to stay. The orchestra reached the final movement. Around us, the ballroom held its collective breath. Richardson hovered helplessly while security forces formed a perimeter. The Galactic Summit's first night was turning into a diplomatic incident, and I was at the center. "Why me?" I asked. "Because you didn't see a monster?" Seraphine said. "You saw someone standing alone." She pulled me into the dance's closing position, her voice barely audible over the music. "And because in 10 seconds someone is going to try to kill me, and you're the only witness they can't simply make disappear." The words hadn't finished leaving her lips when the crystal chandelier exploded above us. I reacted on instinct, pulling Seraphine aside as burning debris rained down. Glass shards tore through my uniform sleeve. Screams erupted across the ballroom. The armored guards rushed forward, but Seraphine raised one hand, freezing them mid-step. "Nobody moves," she commanded, voice carrying absolute authority. This attack wasn't random. Ambassador Richardson was already shouting into his comm and calling for medical teams and security sweeps. Other diplomats fled toward the exits in a chaotic surge. I stood beside the Sanguine Queen, bleeding from a dozen cuts, while she scanned the panicked crowd with predatory focus. There. She pointed toward a service entrance where a figure in maintenance coveralls disappeared. Assassin. Human design, plasmatic charges. "Someone wants this summit to fail. How do you know?" 3 centuries of survival teach you to recognize threats." She turned to me, and for the first time I saw genuine concern in those crimson eyes. "You're injured." "I've had worse." "No, you haven't." She touched my bleeding arm, and I felt a strange tingling sensation. The wound stopped bleeding instantly. "Vampire healing secretions. Don't worry, you won't transform." "It's a myth." Richardson approached cautiously. Security detail surrounding us. "Your Majesty, are you harmed?" Seraphine looked at me with something like respect. "He just saved my life." "I pulled you 3 feet to the left." 3 feet that mattered. She addressed Richardson directly. "Someone tried to assassinate me at your summit, Ambassador, using human technology. This suggests either a faction within Earth's government wants me dead, or someone wants us to believe that. The implications hit me like a physical blow. If Earth was implicated in an attempt on the Sanguine Queen's life, the political fallout would be catastrophic. The vampire species controlled half the trade routes through the Crimson Nebula. A war would devastate both civilizations. We need to find that assassin, I said, before they strike again or disappear completely. Seraphine studied me with newfound interest. A diplomatic lieutenant who thinks like a soldier. What were you before they put you in dress uniform, Marcus Webb? Marine Corps, ma'am. Force Recon. 3 tours in the Outer Colonies conflict. That explains the reflexes. She turned to her armored guards. Stand down. I'm requisitioning Lieutenant Webb as my personal security liaison. Richardson sputtered. Your Majesty, that's highly irregular. Someone just tried to murder me at a peace summit. Irregular is our new normal, Ambassador. Her voice carried the weight of centuries. Your lieutenant has proven himself trustworthy in crisis. I choose him. The armored guards moved silently, forming a protective circle around us. Other species delegations watched from safe distances, their expressions ranging from horror to calculated interest. The Crithian ambassador was already speaking rapidly into communication devices. Within hours, news of the assassination attempt would spread across the galaxy. Ma'am, I said quietly, if I'm your liaison, I need to know what we're really dealing with. Who wants you dead badly enough to risk interstellar war? Everyone, Lieutenant. Absolutely everyone. The question is which of my enemies is bold enough or desperate enough to act here. She gestured toward the destruction. But you've earned honesty, so I'll tell you a secret. I didn't come to the summit to negotiate trade agreements. Then why to find the traitor in my own court before they destroy everything I've built? Her crimson eyes locked onto mine. You asked me to dance, Marcus Webb. You have no idea what dance you've joined, but I promise you this. Before the week ends, you'll understand exactly what humanity means to the universe, and why some beings would kill to prevent that knowledge from spreading. The orchestra had stopped playing. Medical teams rushed through the crowd. Security forces sealed exits and began sweeping for additional threats, and I stood beside the Sanguine Queen, feeling the weight of forces I didn't understand moving around us like sharks circling wounded prey. What do I need to know right now, I asked. That the real danger isn't the assassin who just fled, Seraphine said. It's the ones still here, smiling and offering condolences while planning their next move. She straightened her burgundy gown, somehow still elegant despite the chaos. Welcome to galactic politics, Lieutenant. Try not to die in the first act. Richardson appeared again, this time with the summit's chief of security and 2 analysts. Your Majesty, we're prepared to escort you to secure quarters.
No, I stay visible.
Hiding shows weakness, and weakness invites more attacks. Seraphine's voice carried iron authority. Lieutenant Webb will coordinate with your security forces. He has my complete confidence. I met Richardson's gaze and saw the unspoken message there. Keep her alive. Keep Earth from starting a war. Don't fail. 3 impossible tasks wrapped in diplomatic courtesy. Understood, Ambassador. As the security teams began their work and diplomats returned cautiously to the damaged ballroom, I stayed beside Seraphine. She'd stopped shaking. The vulnerable woman who'd trembled during our dance had vanished, replaced by the ancient predator who'd written interstellar treaty protocols. But I'd seen both versions, and somehow that made all the difference. Your Majesty, I said quietly, you mentioned someone trying to prevent knowledge from spreading. What knowledge? Seraphine looked at me with eyes that had witnessed centuries of war and peace, triumph and tragedy. That humans aren't the fragile newcomers everyone believes. You're the key, Marcus. Your species, your potential. And there are beings old and powerful who would rather see Earth burn than let humanity reach its full strength. She touched my healed arm where the wounds had closed. 300 years I've walked among the stars, watching species rise and fall. I've seen empires crumble and new powers emerge, but I've never seen anything like what humans could become. That's why I came here. That's why someone tried to kill me. And that's why you, brave, foolish lieutenant, have become the most important person at this summit. The weight of her words settled over me like armor. I'd asked a lonely woman to dance. Now I was standing at the center of a conspiracy that spanned star systems. What happens next, I asked. Seraphine smiled, and for a moment I saw both the monster and the woman behind those crimson eyes. Next, we hunt assassins. We uncover conspiracies. And we dance, Lieutenant Webb. We dance on the edge of war and pray we don't fall. She offered her cold hand again. Are you ready? I took her hand, feeling the death-cold fingers wrap around mine. Somewhere in the ballroom, security forces worked to restore order. Diplomats plotted their responses. Enemies watched from shadows, already planning their next strike. But I'd made my choice when I asked the Sanguine Queen to dance. And I'd see it through to whatever end awaited. Ready, Your Majesty. Then let's begin, Seraphine said. The real dance starts now. And the hunt for truth began in the ruins of what should have been peace. The summit's security command center hummed with controlled chaos. Holographic displays floated above workstations, showing damage assessments, personnel locations, and threat analyses in real time. I stood beside Seraphine while Richardson's team scrambled to contain the diplomatic disaster unfolding across 40 species delegations. Plasmatic charge is definitely human origin, Chief of Security Morrison said, highlighting the explosion pattern. But the detonation signature's been modified. Someone tried to disguise the technology. Poorly, Seraphine observed. Any competent investigator would identify it within minutes. This wasn't meant to be subtle. I studied the holographic reconstruction. They wanted us to know it was human technology. The question is, why frame Earth so obviously? Morrison shot me a look that said, military instincts weren't welcome in diplomatic spaces, but Richardson nodded. Lieutenant Webb raises a valid point. If someone wanted to implicate Earth, they could have been far more subtle. She manipulated the hologram with fluid gestures, rotating the blast pattern. Draw attention to the obvious human technology while hiding the real purpose. She zoomed in on the chandelier's mounting point. There. See the secondary scoring? Morrison leaned closer. That's different explosive residue. Crithian thermal paste, Seraphine confirmed. Military grade. Used to ensure the primary charges would drop the chandelier precisely where I stood. Her crimson eyes flicked to me. If your lieutenant hadn't pulled me aside, the falling crystal would have shattered my skull. Vampire regeneration has limits. The room went quiet. An assassination attempt on the Sanguine Queen using combined human and Crithian technology suggested a conspiracy spanning multiple species. The implications were staggering. The Crythians have been our allies for decades, Richardson said carefully. Alliances shift. Seraphine straightened, commanding the room's attention effortlessly. Show me everyone with access to that chandelier in the past 48 hours. Morrison pulled up security footage. Maintenance workers, event coordinators, decoration specialists, all properly credentialed, all background checked, all seemingly innocent, but someone among them had planted charges capable of killing one of the galaxy's oldest beings. There, I pointed to a figure in maintenance coveralls, face obscured by a service cap. Timestamp shows they were working alone for 17 minutes. Everyone else had partners. Morrison worked the controls. The computer hummed, processing data. Then red warnings flashed across every screen. No match. Biometrics don't correspond to any registered maintenance personnel. Faces partially masked even in high-resolution scans. Morrison's expression darkened. Whoever this is, they knew exactly how to avoid our security protocols. Either someone on your security team is compromised or our assassin has access to classified summit planning documents. Richardson's face went pale. If we have a traitor in our organization, assassination plots of this sophistication require infrastructure, support teams, information sources, multiple conspirators. She turned to me. Lieutenant, you've fought insurgencies. How would you approach this? 3 tours tracking rebels who'd mastered the art of blending with civilian populations. We assume nothing. Trust no one outside this room until we verify their loyalties independently, and we follow the physical evidence, not the political theater. Exactly. Seraphine smiled approvingly. Which means we need to examine the chandelier debris personally. Are your people finished with the ballroom? Morrison checked his displays. Forensics team is still processing. Tell them they have 10 minutes, then we're going in. Seraphine's voice carried absolute authority. Someone just declared war on me at a peace summit. I intend to find out who before they try again. We left the command center with an armed escort. Seraphine's 2 armored guards, whom she'd introduced as Commander Lyris and Captain Vex, moved with military precision. Both stood over 7 feet tall, their midnight armor absorbing light like black holes. Neither had spoken since the attack. Your guards are very quiet, I observed. The Crimson Vanguard don't speak during active threats, Seraphine explained as we walked through cleared corridors. They communicate through encrypted neural links, more secure than verbal orders. How long have they served you? Vex only 43. She glanced at the silent warriors. They've saved my life more times than I can count. But even they can't protect against threats they don't see coming. The ballroom looked like a war zone. Shattered crystal covered the marble floor. Scorch marks marred the ornate ceiling. Forensic specialists moved carefully through debris, cataloging evidence with meticulous precision. Seraphine approached the fallen chandelier's remains, crouching beside twisted metal and broken crystal. Her fingers moved across fragments with surprising gentleness. Interesting, she murmured. The crystal wasn't just shattered by impact. Look here.
She held up a shard. Molecular structure's been altered.
Weakened deliberately before the explosion. I examined the piece. Even to my untrained eye, the crystal showed unusual fracture patterns. Someone spent time preparing this. Days, maybe weeks. Which means the assassination was planned long before the summit began. Seraphine stood, dusting off her gown. They knew I'd attend, knew I'd be in this ballroom, predicted my movements with uncomfortable accuracy. Your Majesty, one of the forensics specialists approached hesitantly. We found this embedded in the ceiling support. She held up a small metallic device. It's a recorder. High-end surveillance equipment. Seraphine took the device, turning it over in her cold fingers. Zalarian manufacture. Very expensive. Very illegal under current treaty protocols. She looked at me. Someone's been watching this ballroom for some time. Can we trace where the data was transmitted? I asked. The specialist shook her head. It's encrypted with quantum algorithms. We'd need Zalarian decryption keys, and they're not exactly cooperative with other species. They're cooperative with me, Seraphine said quietly. The Zalarian Collective owes me certain debts. I'll have their cooperation within the hour. She handed the device to Commander Lyris. Get this to our technical specialists. I want to know everything it recorded and where that information went. Lyris took the device and departed silently, moving with liquid grace despite the heavy armor. Your Majesty, Richardson had followed us into the ballroom. I've received word from the Galactic Council. They're demanding answers about the attack. Several delegations are threatening to withdraw from the summit. Tell the Council I'll address them tomorrow morning. Seraphine's voice was steel wrapped in silk. And inform the delegations that anyone who abandons this summit will be remembered when trade negotiations resume next cycle. Fear is understandable. Cowardice is not. As you say, Your Majesty. As he departed, I noticed something in the debris pattern. Your Majesty, look at this. I knelt beside a section of floor where crystal fragments formed an almost perfect circle. The explosion was shaped. Professional demolition work. Military training. Whoever placed these charges knew exactly what they were doing. She glanced at me. Like you would, Lieutenant. I've worked with explosives, but this is beyond field engineering. This is specialist work, the kind of thing special operations teams train years to perfect. Or the kind of thing vampire assassins learn over centuries, Seraphine said softly. There's a possibility we haven't discussed yet, Lieutenant, that the person trying to kill me isn't human or Crithian or Zelarian, that it's one of my own people. The implications chilled me more than her cold touch. A vampire conspiracy? My species has factions. Political divisions that make human politics look simple by comparison. She stood, brushing invisible dust from her gown. I've ruled the Sanguine Throne for 3 centuries, but there are vampires far older who remember when we didn't negotiate with other species. When we simply took what we wanted. They oppose the summit? They oppose everything I've built? The treaties, the alliances, the idea that vampires should be partners rather than predators. Her voice carried ancient weariness. Some believe I've weakened our species by seeking peace, that I've betrayed our true nature. Have you? I asked, knowing it was probably inappropriate but needing to understand. Seraphine looked at me with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. I've ensured our survival, Lieutenant. Predators who only hunt eventually run out of prey. I chose evolution over extinction. Not everyone agrees with that choice. Captain Vex returned, carrying a data pad. They handed it to Seraphine without a word. She read quickly, her expression darkening. The Zelarian recorder captured something interesting. 3 days before the summit, someone accessed restricted summit planning files using Ambassador Richardson's credentials. Richardson? I couldn't hide my shock. Or someone with access to his accounts. Seraphine pulled up the data. They reviewed ballroom layouts, security protocols, and my scheduled appearance times. Then they erased their tracks. Almost perfectly. Zelarian surveillance equipment catches traces even professional hackers miss. Whoever this was, they accessed the files from inside the summit complex, from a terminal in the diplomatic quarters. My mind raced through implications. An inside job. Someone with diplomatic credentials. Someone who knew Richardson's access codes. The suspect pool had just narrowed dramatically and expanded terrifyingly at the same time. We need to lock down the complex, I said. No one in or out until we identify the leak. Half the delegations would interpret that as imprisonment. We have 40 species declaring war within hours. She considered the problem with the patience of someone who'd navigated 3 centuries of political intrigue. But we can monitor movements, track who goes where, look for patterns, and set a trap, I added. Her smile was predatory and approving. Exactly what I was thinking. Clever Lieutenant, tell me, how would you bait such a trap? I thought about insurgent hunting. About drawing enemies into killing zones? We make them think they succeeded. Announce that you're injured, vulnerable. Create an opportunity too tempting to resist, using myself as bait. Seraphine nodded slowly. Dangerous, but my people will hate the idea. Your people want you alive, I pointed out. True. She turned to Captain Vex. Inform Commander Lyris we're implementing Protocol Crimson Shadow. I want our best operatives positioned throughout the complex. Anyone who moves against me gets captured alive. I want answers, not corpses. Vex saluted and departed with the same silent efficiency as Lyris. Protocol Crimson Shadow? I asked. Assassination countermeasures my security forces have drilled for decades. Will make me appear vulnerable while actually surrounding me with lethal protection. She looked at me seriously. You understand this plan puts you in danger as well? As my chosen liaison, you'll be with me constantly. Anyone targeting me will see you as either an obstacle or an accomplice. I understand, ma'am. And you still choose to stay. I thought about the trembling woman who'd asked if I was afraid, about the ancient being who'd watched civilizations rise and fall, about the conspiracy threatening to tear apart the fragile peace between species. I asked you to dance, I said. Seems wrong to leave before the song ends. Seraphine's expression softened into something almost human.
300 years, she repeated quietly. 300 years since someone made me feel like more than a monster.
Whatever happens next, Marcus Webb, know that your choice tonight mattered. To me. To this summit. Perhaps to more than either of us can imagine. She offered her cold hand again, and I took it without hesitation. Then let's see this through, I said. Together, Seraphine agreed. Now come. We have a conspiracy to unravel, and assassins to catch, and somewhere in this complex someone is watching us, planning their next move. Time to remind them why challenging the Sanguine Queen is considered suicide. We left the destroyed ballroom, moving deeper into the summit complex's labyrinthine corridors. Behind us, forensics teams continued cataloging evidence. Ahead of us, dangers waited in shadows. But I'd made my choice, and beside me walked a being 3 centuries old who'd seen every trick, survived every threat, and somehow still believed peace was worth fighting for. The real dance had indeed begun, and I intended to survive long enough to see its ending. Seraphine's private quarters occupied an entire wing of the summit complex, secured behind layers of both technological and biological defenses. As we approached, I noticed the subtle shifts in temperature and air pressure that marked vampire-specific environmental controls. Your species prefers cooler climates? I asked. We're cold-blooded in more ways than one, Seraphine said, but I've learned to adapt to warmer environments over the centuries. Survival requires flexibility. She placed her palm against a security scanner. Fair warning, Lieutenant. You're about to meet the people who actually run the Sanguine Empire. They're going to hate everything about this situation. The doors opened to reveal a conference room where 5 figures waited. 4 wore variations of the midnight armor I'd seen on Lyris and Vex. The 5th, a slender vampire in crimson diplomatic robes, radiated barely controlled fury. Your Majesty, the robed vampire said, voice tight. Returning to your quarters with a human bodyguard was not part of any security protocol I approved. Lord Castellan Darius, Seraphine said coolly. May I introduce Lieutenant Marcus Webb, Earth Diplomatic Corps, my personally selected security liaison. Lieutenant Lord Castellan Darius commands my diplomatic corps and strongly disapproves of most of my decisions. Darius's crimson eyes fixed on me with undisguised contempt. A human. At the center of an assassination attempt using human technology, and you brought him into your inner circle. Have 3 centuries taught you nothing about self-preservation? They've taught me to recognize genuine courage when I see it, Seraphine said. Lieutenant Webb saved my life when he could have fled. That earns trust, or demonstrates cunning. Darius circled me like a predator evaluating prey. How convenient that a human soldier happened to be close enough to pull you from danger. How fortunate that he gained your confidence so quickly. I kept my expression neutral, though my hand wanted to drift toward where my sidearm usually rested. I'd left it in my quarters before the gala. Diplomatic functions didn't allow weapons. Now I felt naked under Darius's scrutiny. Lord Castellan, I said carefully. If I wanted Her Majesty dead, I wouldn't have used human technology that points directly at my species. I'd have been subtler. Perhaps your masters believe obvious frames will redirect suspicion. Darius stopped in front of me. Or perhaps you're exactly what you appear, a naive young soldier being used as a pawn. Darius, enough. Seraphine's voice carried absolute command. I've survived 3 centuries of assassination attempts. I know the difference between genuine threats and manipulation. Lieutenant Webb is not our enemy. Then who is? Demanded one of the armored figures. Someone inside this complex tried to murder you using technologies from multiple species.
That suggests coordination.
Resources. Planning Commander Lyris raises the relevant question, Seraphine said. Show them what we found. I pulled up the forensics data on the room's holographic display, the mixed explosive signatures, the Zalarian surveillance device, the unauthorized access to Summit files. Someone with diplomatic credentials, I explained. Accessed restricted information 3 days ago. They studied Her Majesty's schedule, ballroom layouts, and security protocols. Then they planted charges designed to look like a human attack while using Crithian technology to ensure lethality. Sophisticated, professional. Captain Vex, status on Protocol Crimson Shadow? Seraphine asked. Vex stepped forward, their first vocalization since I'd met them. Their voice was surprisingly soft. Operatives positioned throughout the complex. Surveillance on all diplomatic quarters. If anyone moves against you, we'll intercept. Good. Seraphine turned to Darius. I'm going to appear publicly tomorrow. Announce that I was injured but am recovering. Create an opening for whoever's behind this. Darius's expression darkened further. You're making yourself bait. Your Majesty, this is... Seraphine's tone brooked no argument. Hiding shows weakness. Worse, it gives our enemies time to regroup and plan better attacks. We end this now. And if they succeed? Darius demanded. If your gambit fails and you're killed? What happens to the Empire then? To the treaties? To everything you've built? The room fell silent. I saw genuine concern beneath Darius's anger. These weren't just soldiers and diplomats. They were people who'd served Seraphine for decades, who believed in her vision, who feared losing her. If I die, Seraphine said quietly, then you continue the work. All of you. The treaties stand, the alliances hold. The vision of a galaxy where vampires partner rather than prey survives. That's why I built institutions, Darius. So my death wouldn't destroy everything. Institutional continuity is cold comfort, Your Majesty. Darius's voice lost some of its edge. We'd rather keep you alive. Then help me catch whoever's behind this. Seraphine looked at each of her people in turn. I need your skills, your expertise, your loyalty. Can I count on that? Always, Commander Lyris said, and the others echoed the sentiment. Even Darius, despite his obvious reservations, nodded. You have our service, Your Majesty, as always. Though I still maintain the human is a liability, noted, Seraphine said dryly. Lieutenant Webb, you're dismissed from diplomatic pleasantries. Speak freely in this room. These people need to trust you, and trust requires honesty. I took a breath, gathering my thoughts. Lord Castellan Darius is right to suspect me. From an objective standpoint, I'm a security risk. Unknown human. No established track record with vampire interests. Convenient timing. But here's what I know. Someone is trying to destroy this summit. They're using multiple species technologies to muddy attribution. They have inside access, and they're willing to risk interstellar war to achieve their goals. That suggests fanaticism or desperation. Either way, it makes them dangerous and unpredictable. Sound analysis, one of the armored figures said. I'm Captain Kale, Tactical Operations. What's your military background, Lieutenant? Force Recon, ma'am. 3 tours in counterinsurgency operations. I'm not a diplomat, but I know how to hunt people who don't want to be found. Kale exchanged glances with Lyris. Those are useful skills for our current situation. He also thinks clearly under pressure, Seraphine added. He identified the inconsistencies in the explosion pattern before most of the forensics team. Basic demolition training, I said. You learn to read blast signatures. This one was too precise, too controlled. Military or paramilitary background for whoever said it. Which narrows our suspect pool, Lyris observed. How many beings at this summit have military explosives training? Thousands, probably, Vex said, but only hundreds with access to the diplomatic quarters, and far fewer with reason to want Her Majesty dead specifically. Start there, Seraphine ordered. Cross-reference military backgrounds with access to diplomatic terminals. Look for individuals from species with historical grievances against vampires. And check for financial irregularities. Assassination plots require funding. Her people moved with practiced efficiency, pulling up data streams and coordinating analysis. I watched them work, impressed by the seamless coordination. These weren't just guards. They were an intelligence apparatus that had been refined over decades. Lieutenant, Darius approached me while the others worked. A word privately? We stepped to the side of the room. Darius studied me with eyes that had seen far more than my 28 years of life. I don't trust you, he said bluntly. But Her Majesty does, which means I must tolerate your presence. So I'll give you information you'll need to survive the coming days. Do you know why they call her the Blood Mother? I assumed it was a title like Queen. She's the oldest living vampire, the matriarch of our entire species. Every vampire alive today descends from her bloodline directly or indirectly. When we say she rules the Sanguine Empire, we're not speaking metaphorically. She is literally our genetic ancestor. I felt my understanding of the situation shift. How old is she? 3,000 years? Give or take a few centuries. Records from her early life are fragmentary. Darius's expression was unreadable. She's survived plagues, wars, revolutions, and countless assassination attempts. She's watched civilizations rise from primitive tribes and collapse into dust. And through it all, she's adapted, changed. Evolved from apex predator to diplomatic leader. That kind of transformation creates enemies. The traditional vampires who oppose peace, among others. There are species who remember when vampires were monsters to be feared absolutely, who resent our current diplomatic standing, who want us returned to our cages, literally or figuratively. Darius leaned closer. If she dies, Lieutenant Webb, it won't be politics that dies with her. It will be hope. Hope that beings like us can change, can be more than our hungers, can build instead of just consume. I understand. She's taken a special interest in your species, in humans. She believes you represent something important, a key to understanding how young species can achieve greatness without destroying themselves. That belief makes her vulnerable. It makes her hope when perhaps she should be more cautious. You think her interest in humanity is dangerous? I think hope makes all of us vulnerable, Lieutenant. But I also think it's the only thing worth protecting. Darius straightened. So here's my compromise. I don't trust you. But I'll work with you. Because she's chosen you, and her judgment has kept our species alive for 3,000 years. Don't make me regret this. I'll do my best, Lord Castellan. See that you do. Darius returned to the main group, leaving me to process what I'd learned. 3,000 years. The woman I'd asked to dance was older than human civilization itself, had lived through the entirety of recorded history and millennia before that. The weight of that revelation settled over me like armor. Lieutenant, Commander Lyris called. We've identified 17 beings with military backgrounds and access to diplomatic terminals, cross-referencing with financial records now. I joined them at the holographic display. Faces and dossiers floated in the air. Crithians, Zalarians, even 2 humans from the diplomatic security detail, each with training, means, and access. Any stand out? Seraphine asked. This one. Captain Kale highlighted a Zalarian diplomat, Ambassador Zethstar, former military intelligence operative. Heavy gambling debts. Financial records show unusual payments received 4 months ago. Large sums from untraceable accounts. Enough to fund an assassination operation? I asked. More than enough. And the timing coincides with when summit planning began. Kale pulled up more data. He requested assignment to this summit specifically, unusual for someone with his seniority. Bring him in for questioning, Seraphine ordered. On what grounds? Darius asked. We can't arrest a diplomat without evidence. The political fallout would be manageable compared to allowing an assassin to move freely, Seraphine interrupted. We'll call it a security interview. Standard procedure after an attack. He'll understand. And if he refuses, then we'll know we've found someone worth watching closely. Seraphine looked at me. Lieutenant, I want you present for the interview. Ma'am, you're trained in interrogation. Let's see if our vampire diplomatic techniques combine well with human military methods. Consider it a cultural exchange. Despite the tension, I almost smiled. Yes, Your Majesty. Commander Lyris, bring Ambassador Zethar here. Politely. Captain Vex, ensure we have surveillance on his quarters and any associates. Captain Kale, continue analyzing the other suspects. Darius, prepare diplomatic cover stories in case this goes poorly. Her people moved immediately, centuries of service showing in their coordinated response. Within minutes, the room had transformed into an operations center. I stood beside Seraphine, watching her command with effortless authority. The vulnerable woman from the ballroom had vanished, replaced by the ancient ruler who'd built an empire. But I'd seen both versions now, knew they were the same being, separated only by circumstance and necessity. Seraphine observed, processing, learning, trying not to think too hard about the fact that I'm working counterintelligence operations with a 3,000-year-old vampire queen. She laughed to sound genuinely amused. When you put it that way, it does sound absurd. But life often is, Lieutenant, especially when you live long enough to see the patterns repeat. Her expression sobered. Thank you for staying. I know Darius made the situation clear. You understand the stakes now. Yes, ma'am. And I still choose to help. You could request reassignment. Ambassador Richardson would understand. You'd be safe. about the real answer beneath the obvious ones. Because you looked sad standing alone at a gala designed for connection. Because you trembled during our dance despite being powerful enough to tear me apart. Because someone who's lived 3,000 years and still believes in peace deserves protection. I met her crimson eyes. And because I think you're right about humans, about change, about hope being worth the risk. Seraphine was silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice carried emotions I couldn't quite identify. The galaxy needs more people like you, Marcus Webb, beings willing to choose courage over comfort, connection over isolation, hope over cynicism. She placed her cold hand on my shoulder. Whatever happens in the coming days, remember that your choice tonight mattered. That kindness shown to a stranger changed the course of events. Small actions ripple outward in ways we can never fully predict. Before I could respond, the doors opened. Commander Lyris entered with a Zalarian diplomat who looked both affronted and nervous. Ambassador Zethar's crystalline features reflected the room's lighting in sharp angles. "Commander Lyris," he said stiffly, "I must protest this irregular summons. I have diplomatic immunity, Professor, which no one is violating," Seraphine interrupted smoothly. "Please, Ambassador, sit. We simply wish to speak with you regarding the recent unfortunate incident." Zethar's multifaceted eyes swept the room, taking in the assembled vampires and the lone human. His posture shifted subtly, fight-or-flight calculations running behind alien features. "Of course, Your Majesty," he said too formally. "I am happy to assist with your investigation, though I must say such direct questioning is highly unusual." "Unusual times require unusual methods," Seraphine said. "Now, please, let's discuss your financial activities over the past 6 months. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation for everything." The interrogation had begun. And somewhere in the complex, conspirators watched their plans unravel or adjusted their strategies. The dance continued, steps measured in deception and truth, in danger and desperation. And I stood beside the Blood Mother, ready for whatever came next. The interrogation of Ambassador Zethar lasted 3 hours. Despite Seraphine's diplomatic courtesy and my careful questioning, the Zalarian maintained a careful balance of cooperation and evasion. Yes, he'd received payments from a private investment consortium. No, he couldn't remember their exact names. The gambling debts? A personal matter, unrelated to his diplomatic duties. His request for summit assignment? Simple professional interest. By the end, we had suspicions but no proof. Nothing that would hold up under diplomatic scrutiny. "He's hiding something," I said after Lyris escorted Zethar back to his quarters under discreet surveillance. "Obviously," Darius agreed. "But knowing he's compromised and proving it are different matters. We need evidence, connections, witnesses, or we need him to make a mistake," Seraphine said. She stood by the window, looking out over the summit complex's gardens. Night had fallen, and alien constellations glittered overhead. "He knows we suspect him now." That will force a response. Either he goes to ground and cuts ties with his accomplices, or he reports to them that we're closing in. "Either way, we've changed the equation," Captain Kale observed. "The assassins know their window is closing. They'll either abandon the operation or accelerate their timeline." "Which makes the next 24 hours critical," I said. "They'll want to strike before security gets tighter or Her Majesty returns to vampire space where she's effectively untouchable." "Agreed. So we proceed with Protocol Crimson Shadow. Tomorrow morning I make a public appearance, announce I was injured but am recovering. Display vulnerability, force them to take the bait." "Your Majesty," Darius began, but she raised a hand. "I know the risks, but we've reached a decision point. Either we end this conspiracy now, or we allow it to fester and grow until it strikes when we are even less prepared. Better to force the confrontation on our terms." I studied the security layouts on the holographic display. The main conference hall, large enough to accommodate all delegations, multiple entrances and exits, balconies and upper galleries. It's a tactical nightmare. "Which is exactly why they'll target it if I announce I'm speaking there," Seraphine said. "Opportunities for crossfire, escape routes, and plausible deniability, perfect for assassins. Also perfect for our counter-operation," Commander Lyris added. "We control the space. We can position assets throughout. Create kill zones that appear to be vulnerabilities." "I want snipers in the galleries," I said, tactical instincts taking over. "Plainclothes operatives among the diplomatic delegations, explosive detectors at every entrance.
real-time biometric scanning to identify anyone using disguise technology. Aggressive security will make the delegates nervous, Darius warned.
Good, Seraphine said. Nervous people pay attention. Alert people notice threats. I want everyone on edge. It makes infiltration harder and gives us more eyes watching for irregularities. We spent the next several hours planning the operation in detail. Positioning forces, identifying sight lines, creating contingency protocols for every conceivable scenario. By the time we finished, dawn was breaking over the summit complex. Get some rest, Seraphine ordered her people. We'll need everyone sharp for tomorrow. Dismissed. The room cleared except for the two of us. Seraphine moved to a side chamber, gesturing for me to follow. Inside was what looked like a vampire version of living quarters. Elegant furniture in dark colors, temperature controlled to levels I found uncomfortably cold, lighting adjusted to minimize brightness. This is your idea of rest? I asked. 3,000 years of life teaches you to sleep when you can, not when you're tired. She settled into a chair with fluid grace. But I wanted to speak with you privately before tomorrow, away from Darius's suspicions and my people's protective instincts. I remained standing, uncertain. Ma'am? Sit, Lieutenant, please. We're past formal military protocols at this point. When I sat across from her, she continued, you've been thrown into a situation far beyond your diplomatic training. You're handling it well. But I need to know you understand what you're walking into tomorrow. An assassination trap where I'm standing next to the primary target. More than that. You're standing between ancient powers and their goals. Between species with grievances spanning millennia. Between those who believe in evolution and those who cling to old hungers. Her crimson eyes held mine. And you're representing humanity in a way your government never intended. I'm just a lieutenant, Your Majesty. I don't represent... You represent human potential. Human choice. The ability of your young species to see beyond immediate self-interest and act with genuine courage. She leaned forward slightly. Do you know why some beings want this summit to fail? Why they'd risk war to prevent these negotiations? You mentioned vampires who oppose peace, species who fear vampire power. True, but incomplete. The real fear is what humanity represents. Seraphine's voice carried weight.
You're the youngest spacefaring species, the least powerful militarily.
The most fragile biologically. By every metric, you should be irrelevant in galactic affairs. But you're not, because you have something older species have lost. Adaptability, creativity, the willingness to change core behaviors in single generations rather than centuries. I don't understand. Vampires took 10,000 years to evolve from apex predators to diplomats. The Crithians needed 15,000 to move beyond tribal warfare. The Zolarians required 20,000 years to develop cross-species empathy. She smiled sadly. Humans have accomplished similar transformations in mere centuries. You're dangerous because you evolve faster than anyone else can predict or control. And that terrifies species who've spent millennia building power structures based on unchanging hierarchies. The implications stunned me. You're saying the assassination attempt isn't just about you. It's about preventing human influence from spreading. Exactly. I'm a symbol of vampire evolution. You're a symbol of human potential. Together, we represent a future some beings will kill to prevent. A galaxy where change happens quickly, where ancient powers can be challenged by newcomers, where hierarchies based on age and tradition can be disrupted by fresh thinking and different perspectives. That's why you took special interest in my species. Because I've seen empires rise and fall based on their ability to adapt. The ones that evolve survive. The ones that stagnate collapse. Humanity is evolution incarnate. If older species can learn from you, they might survive the next 10,000 years. If they can't, they'll go extinct while you thrive. She stood, moving to the window again. So tomorrow, when you stand beside me, you're not just protecting the Sanguine Queen. You're defending the idea that young species deserve respect. That age doesn't automatically confer wisdom. That change, however frightening, is necessary for survival. No pressure, then. She laughed quietly. I don't expect you to save the galaxy, Lieutenant. Just to survive tomorrow and help me catch whoever's trying to destroy what we're building. The rest will sort itself out over time. Decades, centuries, millennia. But it starts with small choices. Like asking a stranger to dance. Like choosing to stay when you could run. Like believing peace is worth fighting for. I do believe that, I said.
even knowing the risks. Good. She turned to face me fully. Then let me teach you something that might keep you alive. Vampire combat techniques, basic defensive movements. If assassins come for me tomorrow, you'll need more than Marine training to survive. Now, I've trained thousands of warriors over 3 millennia. I can teach you enough in a few hours to make a difference. If you're willing to learn.
About trust and manipulation.
About how easily a predator could use this opportunity. But I also thought about the woman who'd trembled during our dance. About 3 hours of careful interrogation where she'd been fair and thorough. About the way her people clearly loved and trusted her despite their fears. I'm willing, Your Majesty. And please, when we're alone, you may call me Seraphine. Titles feel excessive at this point. She moved to an open space in the room. First principle of vampire combat. We're faster than most species, but not invulnerable. Speed is useless without precision. Let me show you. What followed was the strangest training session of my life. Seraphine moved with impossible grace, demonstrating techniques that seemed to defy physics. But she broke each movement down patiently, adjusting for my human limitations, building muscle memory through repetition. You're naturally talented, she observed after an hour. Your military training gives you good foundations. Now we're just adding vampire-specific awareness, how to track movement patterns, how to predict strikes before they happen, how to use an opponent's speed against them. We continued until I was exhausted and she was satisfied. My muscles ached from movements I'd never attempted. My mind buzzed with new information about angles and timing and reading body language across species. Enough, Seraphine finally said. You need rest. Tomorrow will be demanding. What about you? Don't you need sleep? Vampires require less than humans, and I have 3,000 years of practice functioning without it. I'll be fine. She guided me to a side chamber with human-appropriate furnishings. Sleep here. My quarters are the safest location in the complex. Nothing will reach you that doesn't go through my guards first. I hesitated at the doorway. Thank you. For the training. For everything. Thank you for choosing to stay. Her expression was gentle. Sleep well, Marcus. Tomorrow we dance with monsters. Let's make sure we're the ones still standing when the music ends. I fell asleep quickly despite the alien surroundings, exhaustion, overwhelming anxiety, and I dreamed of ancient beings and young species, of dances and dangers, of choices that rippled outward through time in ways impossible to predict. When I woke, dawn had fully broken. The day of Protocol Crimson Shadow had arrived. I found Seraphine already awake, reviewing final security dispositions with her command team. She'd changed into formal robes that somehow made her look even more regal and intimidating, crimson and black, with subtle armor woven into the fabric. Diplomatic and deadly in equal measure. Lieutenant, she greeted me. Excellent timing. We're finalizing positions. Commander Lyris will brief you on your specific role. Lyris approached, their expression unreadable behind their helmet. You'll stay within 3 meters of Her Majesty at all times. Close enough to intervene, far enough to scan for threats. Your primary responsibility is her safety, not engaging enemies. Leave combat to us unless you have no choice. Understand? Yes, Commander. Good. Captain Vex will be positioned in the upper gallery with sniper coverage. Captain Kale will lead the plainclothes team among the delegates. I'll be at Her Majesty's side with you. We have 40 additional operatives throughout the conference hall. If anyone moves against her, they won't get far. What about Ambassador Zethar? I asked. Under surveillance. He's requested permission to attend the speech, which we've granted. Better to have him where we can watch him than let him operate from shadows. Lyris handed me a small device, encrypted communicator, direct link to our tactical network. If you see anything suspicious, report immediately. Understood. One more thing. Lyris stepped closer, voice lowering. If the situation deteriorates beyond recovery, if Her Majesty is critically injured and extraction becomes impossible, your orders are to survive and report what happened. The Empire needs witnesses. We need someone who can tell the truth about whatever occurs. Can you do that? The weight of that responsibility settled over me. I hope I won't have to, but yes. If necessary, I'll survive and report. Good. Lyris stepped back. Then let's proceed. Her Majesty is addressing the Galactic Council in 30 minutes. We moved through the complex with military precision. Seraphine at the center, surrounded by layers of protection. Checkpoints every 50 meters. Biometric scanners. Explosive detectors. Security so tight it felt suffocating. The delegates noticed. As we entered the main conference hall, I saw nervous glances, whispered conversations. The atmosphere was tense.
charged with anticipation and fear. The hall itself was magnificent, vaulted ceilings soaring 40 meters high, balconies on 3 levels, diplomatic seating arranged in a semicircle facing a central podium, capacity for over 1,000 beings. Currently filled to perhaps 700 as various delegations had chosen to attend, I scanned the crowd with new awareness, using techniques Seraphine had taught me hours before, looking for inconsistencies, unnatural movements, bodies positioned wrong for casual observation, and I saw them. Small things. A Crithian delegate who kept checking chronometers. A Zolarian pair communicating through hand signals. 3 humans in diplomatic security positions who seemed overly focused on the podium rather than the crowd. Commander, I murmured into the communicator. Multiple possibles. Northeast gallery, 2 Crithians. Southeast seating, Zolarian pair. Western security position, 3 humans showing operational focus. Confirmed, Lyris responded, monitoring all. Maintain position. Seraphine ascended to the podium with perfect composure. She wore her injuries like theater. A slight limp, carefully displayed bruising on her left arm, movements suggesting pain she was heroically concealing. The performance was masterful. Distinguished delegates, she began, her voice carrying effortlessly through the hall. I come before you today not as the unscathed leader you expected, but as living proof that those who oppose peace will stop at nothing to maintain division. Murmurs rippled through the assembled beings. Seraphine continued, describing the attack with strategic detail. Enough to inform, not enough to reveal our investigation's progress. Creating sympathy, building alliance, turning attempted murder into political momentum. But I stand here nonetheless, she concluded. Injured but unbroken. Bloodied but unbowed, because peace is worth more than my personal safety. Worth more than fear, worth more than the easy comfort of old hatreds. The speech was brilliant, inspiring, exactly the kind of rhetoric that would infuriate anyone opposed to her vision. And as she spoke, I watched our suspects with increasing tension. The chronometer-checking Crithian stood, moved toward an exit. Normal bathroom break or suspicious behavior? I tracked him with peripheral vision. The Zolarian pair shifted positions, separated, still communicating through hand signals, creating distance. Flanking maneuver? The 3 human security officers remained fixed, too fixed, like they were waiting for a signal. All units, I whispered into the communicator. Pattern Delta. Suspects mobilizing. Hold position, Lyris commanded. Let them commit. Seraphine was building toward her conclusion. And so I invite all species, all factions, all beings of goodwill to join me in building a future where our differences become strengths rather than weaknesses, where ancient grievances give way to new possibilities, where the Crithian who'd left returned. Different gait, different posture. Not the same individual. Disguised technology, imposter northeast entrance. I transmitted urgently. Everything happened simultaneously. The fake Crithian drew a weapon. The Zolarian pair produced devices I recognized as sonic disruptors. The 3 human security officers reached for concealed firearms, and I threw myself towards Seraphine as the conference hall exploded into chaos. Lyris moved faster than seemed possible, intercepting the fake Crithian shot with their armored body. Energy blast deflected into the ceiling. Vex's sniper fire took down 1 Zolarian before they could activate their disruptor. Kale's plainclothes team swarmed the human security officers, but there were more. So many more. Disguised delegates revealing weapons. Coordinated attacks from multiple vectors. Not just an assassination attempt, a full-scale assault. I covered Seraphine as she dove behind the podium, using defensive techniques she'd taught me hours before. A blast scorched the air where her head had been. Another impacted the podium structure, sending fragments flying. Fall back to secondary position, Lyris commanded through the tactical network. All units engage. Protect Her Majesty at all costs. Innocent delegates stampeded toward exits while combatants fought through the chaos. Vampire operatives engaged assassins with lethal efficiency. But the attackers kept coming. Dozens. Maybe more. They're trying to pin us here, I shouted to Seraphine over the weapons fire. We need to move, or they'll surround us. Agreed. She rose partially, assessing the situation with 3,000 years of combat experience. Northwest exit. 30 meters. Can you make it? Lyris and 2 other operatives created a moving shield around us. Energy blasts and projectiles hammered their armor. 1 operative went down, leg severed by a cutting beam.
They kept firing from the floor, buying seconds with their life. The northwest exit loomed closer. 20 meters. 15. 10. An explosion ripped through the floor ahead of us, cutting off escape. Plasma mines. They'd predicted our route. "Change of plan," Seraphine said with eerie calm. "Upper galleries. We go vertical." She grabbed me, and suddenly we were moving at vampire speed. Impossible acceleration. Leaping barriers. Scaling walls. My human body protested the forces, but her grip kept me secure as we climbed. We reached the second-level gallery just as another explosion collapsed the section we'd been standing on moments before. Lyris and the remaining operatives followed, their armor showing scorch marks and damage. "Status," Seraphine demanded. 40-plus hostiles, Lyris reported. "Mixed species. Coordinated assault. They're trying to collapse the building with us inside." "Vex? Northwest position, covering your ascent?" "I count 63 hostiles now. More arriving. This isn't just assassination. It's extermination." "Ambassador Richardson?" I asked, sudden fear for my own people gripping me. "Safe. Evacuated with other diplomatic staff when fighting started." Lyris checked their tactical display. "But we're cut off. Main exits are controlled by enemy forces. They've got the building surrounded."
I looked at Seraphine. Despite the chaos, despite the danger, she appeared almost calm.
Like she'd been expecting this. You knew they'd try something this big. Using me as bait revealed the conspiracy's true scope. This isn't a few disgruntled vampires or one faction of extremists. This is a coalition, multiple species working together to stop the summit, to stop us. "Then we need extraction," Lyris said. "I'm calling in our ships." "They'll be destroyed before they can land," Seraphine countered. "The enemy has orbital positions." This was planned in detail. The conference hall was being systematically demolished. Trapped delegates screamed. Some were cut down by indiscriminate weapons fire. Others were crushed by falling debris. "We can't stay here," I said, "and we can't fight through 60-plus hostiles. We need a third option." "The maintenance tunnels," Captain Kale transmitted. "Below the conference hall. They connect to the rest of the complex, if we can reach them." "They'll be watching those too," Darius's voice cut in. The Lord Castellan had joined the tactical network. "But they might not have enough forces to cover every access point. I can create a diversion, draw their attention while you extract Her Majesty." "Darius—" "No," Seraphine began. "Your Majesty, you are the Sanguine Empire. Your survival ensures our species continues. My life is a small price." His voice was steady, resolved. "I've served you for 90 years. Let me serve you one last time." Before Seraphine could respond, alarms blared throughout the complex. Darius had triggered something major: emergency protocols, evacuation procedures. Chaos multiplied as automated systems activated. "He's pulling security forces throughout the complex," Lyris reported, creating confusion. "It's working. Hostiles are repositioning to respond." "Then we move now," Seraphine said, voice tight with emotion she couldn't quite hide, before his sacrifice is wasted. We descended rapidly, using vampire speed and human tactical thinking in combination. The building shook continuously. Fires spread through multiple levels. Structural integrity alarms shrieked warnings. The maintenance access was exactly where Kale had indicated. A small hatch easily overlooked. Lyris forced it open, revealing dark tunnels below. "You first, Your Majesty," they said. "Together," Seraphine insisted. "All of us or none of us." We dropped into darkness, landing in water and chemical runoff. The tunnels were cramped, designed for utility drones, not people. We moved in single file, Seraphine leading with her superior night vision. Behind us, explosions continued. The conference hall was dying. And somewhere above, Darius was buying our escape with his life. "How far to safe extraction?" I asked. 2 kilometers to the eastern complex boundary, Seraphine said. "From there, we can call for evacuation without enemy orbital forces intercepting. Assuming we reach it," Lyris added grimly, "these tunnels aren't empty."
Ahead, I heard movement. Splashing.
Multiple contacts. The enemy had anticipated this route after all. "Contact front," I transmitted. "Unknown numbers. Defensive formation," Seraphine ordered. "Vex, can you provide sniper support?" "Negative. No sight lines in enclosed spaces." We were on our own. The first wave came at us with coordinated precision. Mixed species assault team. Crithian shock troops with energy shields, Zalarian infiltrators using stealth tech, human soldiers with military-grade equipment. Seraphine moved through them like death itself. 3,000 years of combat experience in every motion. Lyris fought with mechanical efficiency. The other operatives created a defensive perimeter, and I did what I'd been trained to do. Used the confined space to negate enemy advantages. Targeted weak points Seraphine had taught me to recognize. Fought like my life and hers depended on perfect execution. Because they did.
We pushed through the first wave. Then the second.
Bodies fell in dark water. The tunnels ran red with blood from multiple species. My uniform was torn. Lyris's armor was cracked. Seraphine bled from a dozen wounds that would have killed a human but only slowed her slightly. 1 kilometer to extraction, she gasped. Keep moving. More explosions above. The complex was collapsing in sections. If we didn't escape soon, we'd be buried alive. Darius? Seraphine transmitted. Report status. Silence. Darius respond. Then a weak voice. Your Majesty. Successful diversion, but I'm trapped. Structural collapse. We're coming back for you, Seraphine said immediately.
No, you're not.
Darius's voice strengthened slightly. You're continuing forward. You're surviving. You're building the future I believed in. That's an order from your Lord Castellan. Darius, it's been an honor, Your Majesty. Tell them we chose hope, even when hope seemed impossible. The connection cut. Another explosion. Closer this time. The tunnel ceiling cracked ominously. Seraphine stood frozen for a heartbeat. Ancient grief warring with necessities of survival. Then she moved forward, each step costing visible effort. For Darius, she whispered. For everyone who believed. We ran through crumbling tunnels chased by structural failure and pursuing enemies. The exit appeared ahead. Daylight. Freedom. Survival. We burst into open air, emerging in the eastern gardens. Vampire extraction ships descended immediately, their weapon systems engaging orbital threats. Energy blasts crisscrossed the sky. One enemy ship exploded. Then another. Boarding now, Lyris commanded. We scrambled aboard the nearest ship. As the ramp closed behind us, I looked back at the summit complex. Smoke rose from multiple sections. The conference hall had collapsed completely. Fires raged unchecked. Hundreds of beings had been inside. Diplomats. Staff. Delegates from 40 species. All caught in an attack meant for one vampire queen. Casualties? Seraphine asked quietly. The ship's commander hesitated. Preliminary reports suggest significant losses, Your Majesty. Exact numbers pending, but hundreds confirmed dead. Possibly more. Seraphine closed her eyes. 3,000 years of life, and still grief touched her. Darius? No signal from his communicator. Last known position was in the collapsed central section. She nodded slowly, accepting what she already knew. Her Lord Castellan, who'd served 90 years, was gone, along with so many others. I moved beside her, offering silent support. She leaned against me slightly, a gesture I suspected she'd never show her own people. A moment of vulnerability from an ancient being who'd just lost someone irreplaceable. We survived, I said quietly. Yes, we survived. Her voice was hollow. But at what cost? The ship accelerated away from the summit complex, leaving behind destruction and death. Leaving behind Darius and hundreds of innocent beings. Leaving behind the first attempt at genuine galactic peace and living memory. Your Majesty, the ship commander said carefully, we're receiving transmissions. Multiple factions are claiming responsibility for the attack. The conspiracy's fragmenting. Members turning on each other. Good, Seraphine said, steel returning to her voice. Let them destroy themselves. We'll rebuild. We'll try again. Because the alternative is accepting that violence wins. That hope was foolish. She looked at me. We don't accept that, do we, Lieutenant? I met her crimson eyes, seeing the 3,000-year burden she carried. The centuries of choosing evolution over stagnation. The endless fight for a better future. No, ma'am, I said firmly. We don't accept that. Around us her surviving operatives gathered. Wounded. Exhausted. But alive. And already planning next steps. The dance wasn't over. The song had just gotten more complicated.
But we were still standing. Still moving forward.
Still choosing hope.
even when hope seemed impossible. 3 weeks later, I stood in a memorial garden on Seraphine's homeworld, watching her speak to assembled delegations from 30 species, not 40. 10 had withdrawn after the attack, but 30 remained. 30 still believed. "We honor those who fell," Seraphine said, her voice carrying across crystalline monuments. Darius Castellan, who gave his life so peace might survive. The 417 diplomats, staff, and delegates who died believing in a better future. They are not failures. They are foundations, built on sacrifice, watered with blood, growing toward light we may not live to see, but our children will. I stood beside her, wearing formal dress uniform. My role had changed. No longer just a lieutenant, now officially appointed as human liaison to the Sanguine Throne. A position created specifically because a young soldier had asked a lonely queen to dance. The investigation had revealed the conspiracy's scope. Traditionalist vampires, extremist Crithians, Zalarian military factions, human supremacist groups, all united by fear of change, all willing to kill to maintain hierarchies they understood. We'd broken the conspiracy, arrested dozens, prevented follow-up attacks, but we couldn't undo the damage, couldn't bring back the dead, couldn't erase the trauma. "What happens now?" I'd asked Seraphine the previous evening.
"We continue," she'd said simply. "We rebuild."
"We try again, because giving up means they win. Means Darius died for nothing. Means all those people who believed in peace were fools, and I refuse to accept that." Now, watching her speak with authority earned over millennia, I understood why her people followed her. Why even beings who opposed her respected her. She'd lived long enough to know that progress was measured in centuries, that setbacks were inevitable, that hope required stubbornness as much as faith. The memorial ceremony concluded. Delegates dispersed to private mourning rituals. Seraphine stood alone among the monuments, one hand resting on Darius's memorial crystal. I approached quietly. "Your Majesty? I asked you to call me Seraphine when we're alone." Her voice was gentle, tired. "Seraphine, the Earth delegation is requesting guidance on next steps. Ambassador Richardson wants to know if you'll accept humanity's proposal for permanent liaison status. With you in that role, if you're willing?" "I am." "Good." She turned from the memorial. "Marcus, do you understand what you've become? You're not just a liaison. You're a symbol of human potential, of choosing courage, of the idea that young species deserve respect." She smiled sadly. "It's a heavy burden. Are you ready for it? About chandelier explosions and tunnel fights, about Darius's final transmission, about hundreds of beings who'd believed peace was worth the risk." "I'm ready," I said, "not because I'm special, but because someone has to be. And you chose me, for better or worse." "For better," Seraphine said firmly. "Always for better. Your presence at the summit changed everything, not just because you saved my life, because you represented what humanity could become. What all species could become. Beings who choose connection over isolation, who see strangers as potential allies rather than automatic threats. The traditionalists will keep opposing you. Of course, change threatens comfortable certainties, but they're fighting history itself. Species either evolve or go extinct. I learned that 30 centuries ago. Now I'm teaching it to anyone who will listen." She offered her hand. "Walk with me. We have much to discuss about your new role, about humanity's place in galactic affairs, about the future we're building from the ashes of what was destroyed." I took her hand, no longer surprised by its death-cold touch. That coldness was just biology. What mattered was the warmth of vision, the heat of determination, the fire of hope that burned despite every reason to let it die. We walked through the memorial garden, planning next steps, building strategies, preparing for challenges ahead. And somewhere in the universe, other beings watched. Some with hope, some with fear, some with hatred, but all knowing the same truth. The Sanguine Queen had danced with a human soldier, and that dance had changed everything. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. And I intended to see it through to whatever end awaited, standing beside an ancient being who'd chosen evolution over stagnation, progress over comfort, hope over despair, because 3 weeks ago I'd asked a lonely woman to dance, and she'd answered with truth, that I wasn't dancing with a monster. I was dancing with hope itself, wearing crimson eyes and carrying 3,000 years of hard-won wisdom. The galaxy would never be the same. And neither would I.